with the networking, I think it's always important to like network and make new connections and reach out. Like we connected on LinkedIn. Like I really appreciate those sort of connections. I think it's really great. Connected to that is like the authenticity. So wanting to know other people's stories or wanting to connect, whether it's like creatively to help each other out, but not necessarily just to like grow or take advantage.
まもなく1番線を電車が通過いたします。危ないですから黄色い線の内側までお下がりください。
¿Te dedicas a una carrera creativa y sueñas con estudiar o desarrollar tu carrera en Japón? Te quiero ayudar con ideas, recursos y contactos que te pueden cambiar la vida. Soy Byron Barón, educador y promotor cultural, y comparto contigo lo mejor que guardo de más de 30 años en contacto con Japón, su cultura, su idioma y todo lo que estoy seguro te va a encantar. Japón es mucho más que sushi, samurái y geisha. También es arte, innovación y mucha creatividad. Bienvenida, bienvenido a lo mejor de Japón para gente creativa. Hoy te quiero presentar a Lucy Dayman. Lucy es una chica australiana con casi 5 años de residencia en Tokio, donde desarrolla su carrera creativa como periodista, educadora, copywriter, editora y en relaciones públicas para una gama de clientes internacionales y japoneses. Ha publicado en los más importantes medios relacionados con Japón, comenzando con la JNTO, la Organización Nacional de Turismo del Japón, la BBC, Tokyo Weekender, Tokyo Film Festival Magazine y la popular revista Metropolis. Pronto también en la guía Lonely Planet, así como en una importante lista de blogs especializados en turismo y estilo de vida en Japón. Como creativa, Lucy ha incursionado en el mercado japonés, estableciendo una agencia independiente de diseño y comunicaciones con su socio japonés y un equipo internacional, un proyecto del que también nos comenta. Hoy compartimos con ella, en inglés, parte de lo que ha sido su experiencia en Japón como profesional creativa. Espero que disfrutes esta conversación. ¡Sore ya! ¡Ikimashou!
Lucy Dayman, thank you very much for your time, for dedicating this space to share with our community about your experience as a creative professional in Japan. Welcome to contactojapon.com.
No, thank you so much for having me. I'm flattered that you want to talk to me in the first place. Thank you very much. I really appreciate it. So basically, when I was in elementary school, we had a Japanese exchange where some Japanese students came to our school, and we had some exchange families who looked after the kids. That was my first kind of introduction to Japanese culture, but I'd never been to Japan or anything like that. Then in 2013, I came to ski like most Australians do. But I went to Yamagata. Have you ever been?
Okay. Yep.
Yeah, it's beautiful. So it wasn't like a lot of Australians go to Niseko, which is just kind of like a tiny Australian village in the snow in Hokkaido now. So going to Yamagata was really interesting in a Mount Zao. It was really kind of Japanese. Onsen, my first onsen experience. I did it with my mom. I was so nervous, but I love it now. And then 2000, I went back. I was only here for 2 weeks. And on the second day of skiing, my ski trip, I fell and busted my knee. So I spent the rest of the 2 weeks kind of just in a ski lodge, but I loved it.
Wow.
Yeah. And then 2015, I came back just for 2 or 3 weeks vacation, doing the golden route, Tokyo, Kyoto, Osaka. That was about it. And it was a lot of fun. I met a friend who was Australian who was working here as an English teacher, working in Osaka, actually. I'm in Tokyo as an English teacher. And it sounded interesting. I was about 25, so I had a little bit of a quarter-life crisis. I wasn't too sure what I was going to do. So I was working, but I was kind of bored. So I thought I listened to his experience living in Japan. So I thought maybe I'll come back and as an English teacher for a year and reassess what I'm doing, work-wise and everything. So I came back in 2016, summer 2016. Yeah. And then started working as an English teacher. So I did that for a little bit under a year. In the meantime, I'd done a lot of little bit of writing here and there because I didn't start work until 12 noon. So I had like a whole morning. So that's when I kind of started doing writing.
You have co-founded a creative agency in Tokyo with a Japanese partner.
Yeah, so we co-founded, my business partner and myself, we met through our friends actually, and he was doing a lot of marketing stuff for another creative agency, and he's Japanese and he speaks English. My Japanese is still really bad, admittedly, really bad. But so we met and we were doing some projects together kind of as freelancers because I'd quit English teaching and I'd been getting enough jobs to kind of get by doing like copywriting, travel writing. And so we started working together a little bit, and then we thought we should legitimize this and set up a proper business. So we got business cards, made the website, all that sort of stuff. And like most of my clients were travel-related clients. So like Go Tokyo. I was doing a lot of copywriting for like Go Tokyo, JNTO. JNTO is a lot.
Good.
And then, we started working with like a couple of other, like we also offer we shifted from Yoichiro, my business partner. He knew a lot about marketing and I did a lot of copywriting, but then we hired like video creators and photographers as like freelancers. So we started working with like other bigger companies. Yoichiro focused on video creation for like Van Moof, which is like an electric bike company. We also worked with Google Arts and Culture about a year ago, creating like travel content. And then we also launched a CBD oil brand, but it's from like a hemp plant. So it's been really interesting working with that company here in Japan because, you know, their relationship with marijuana is kind of pretty strict. So it was an interesting kind of experience trying to launch this CBD oil brand. But basically it's kind of like the benefits of hemp without the fun of it, kind of like without getting high, basically. So, So we launched that, and then we do a lot of like content creation, video creation, copywriting, kind of like we say like creative communication, because I have a PR background too. So a little bit of everything.
You have a very big opportunity and very big a lot of chances working with a Japanese partner, because he can be that key person to connect yourself or to connect your company with Japanese clients. Are you addressing your services only to Japanese companies, only to foreign companies in Japan, both?
That's an interesting one, actually. So basically, while we were both working as freelancers, we actually both had kind of steady clients that we were working with. So Yuichiro in the marketing kind of world and me with more like a copywriting, travel writing world. So while we were doing that, we kind of formed, while we had both these separate clients, we kind of formed and we had a little bit of crossover at the start. So he was working with mainly Japanese companies in Japanese, very Japanese. And I was working with a lot of like foreign, like a lot of travel, like I guess a year before the Olympics was supposed to happen, travel working here was kind of a bit of a boom. I think it was nuts. Like there were so many opportunities. It was amazing. So many chances to travel, really actually jobs that pay okay. So it was great. So basically I had like this Japanese company with like wanting an international perspective. That was mainly my clients, and his were mainly Japanese clients. But then also when we came together, we kind of realized we can kind of merge our skills. So he can also propose to his Japanese clients English copywriting, translation, localization, those sort of things. So right now it's mainly Japanese companies, but our ideal position would also be helping foreign companies kind of reach Japanese audiences. I think that's also something we want to do more of in the future for sure.
Entrepreneurship, new business models, lot of foreign companies looking to Japan. So how do you consider the presence and relevance of foreign professionals within the current Japanese moment or society?
I think that's a really interesting question because, as you know, I guess like Japan is so homogenous. It's still such a homogenous country. You know, most of the people there are Japanese. So the impact of like I was thinking about, like foreign people coming to Australia, it's a little bit more diverse. So the impact doesn't feel as kind of strong or harsh. I don't know. I feel like foreigners in like even in any setting in Japan is here. But basically, I was just saying, as a foreigner, kind of even just being here is maybe a little bit more of a statement than, say, if you were a foreigner coming to America or coming to Australia or one of those countries. So I think it's kind of like, I know a lot of people talk about this, but even when you come to Japan, if you live in Japan your whole life and you speak Japanese, you're never really going to feel like a Japanese person if you're not Japanese native, right? But I think that's also kind of a good opportunity. I know that for me, at least personally, as being non-Japanese, I've had a lot of opportunities here, like that I don't have to fit into like a certain box, or I don't have to I get a free pass maybe with some sort of things, being a bit of a dumb gaijin, whatever, but it kind of is a little bit of a benefit sometimes. Well, it has been for me. I don't know. I guess people of different backgrounds may have different experiences, of course, and I have to be aware of that and my level of privilege. But I think that it's kind of also, for me, when I came here, it's been a great start. And I think that like coming to Japan and not having any expectations has been a great chance to try new things and have new opportunities. And I think that when for a lot of foreign people who I know in Japan, I'm not super connected with like a foreign business world. Like maybe I should be a little bit more. I think I've been a bit kind of centered on myself and then the business. So I haven't really had an opportunity to meet a lot of other like foreign business people in Japan. But I think that from the people that I do know, like there's a lot of kind of creativity and a lot of people who are willing to take risks. I was thinking about people that I admire. One of my friends, his name's Vaughn. He's been here for ages, but he loves coffee so much, and he just launched a cafe in like this tiniest little corner of Tokyo that nobody knows. And it's just doing so well because he kind of approached this cafe with a more like kind of foreign perspective. It's not really a cafe where you go and read your book and drink coffee. It's a cafe kind of built on like community. You can't expect to go to this cafe and just kind of be by yourself. You have to kind of connect with everyone, and it's worked really well. So kind of people trying these like new outsider ways of thinking, I think is really beneficial for Japan, I think, in terms of creativity and inspiration. I don't know, what do you think?
Being able to open an agency, that was something that 15, 20 years ago was really difficult, but maybe not that much. Still have some difficulties, I know. But you're doing it.
Yeah, but maybe it's thanks in large part to people like you who are here like 14 years before, working the hard, like doing the hard yards, you know. I think that there's probably like some sort of precedent that other foreigners living in Japan before I have kind of set that I can kind of, I guess, like, what do I like? Get some sort of value from, I guess, or kind of like, so thank you for that. Thank you for your hard work in Japan. It's interesting too to think about, because I wonder, because when I came here, like, and I've had a relatively kind of easy ride, is like, it was 4 years until the Olympics, and the Olympics was such a big thing on kind of like, at least in Tokyo, the psyche of like, we have to do this for the Olympics. We have to prepare for the Olympics. We have to kind of like understand foreign cultures because we're going to host the Olympics. I wonder, like, from your perspective, how much of the Olympics, the Tokyo 2020 Olympics, the idea of that being kind of like the carrot at the front of the string kind of motivated Japan to be more open to foreign experiences and foreign people?
I was wondering about how do you feel and how were you as a creative professional being in the creative movement activity in the heat of Tokyo, right? How were you perceiving and living this current situation?
I think like working in the creative industry is kind of interesting because a lot of the people, I've never worked in like a really Japanese kind of industry, right? So I guess my perspective on like Japanese culture and Japanese society is quite limited because I'm studying Japanese now, but it's not great. So a lot of I have a lot of Japanese friends, but they all have like some level of, most of them have like a level of English, like close friends, and also working in the creative world and the freelance world. It's not really typically like salary man, salary woman kind of culture. So I think it's interesting like to talk to friends, especially Japanese friends, about their experience because they have a perspective that I'm never, ever going to probably experience. But I guess working in the creative industry has been really great. It's been a wonderful opportunity. I worked in the music industry back in Australia. I was the editor of a music magazine and it was great too, but it's quite a small city and I feel like the level of competition there is quite high. So it's kind of like we have Australian saying is like tall poppy syndrome. So when someone's successful, you kind of cut them down because you don't really like to see people get too successful. Whereas here in Japan, I guess the pool of people is bigger, but I think the creative community feels really, really supportive here too. So I think that's really interesting too. I think you can find your tribe. There's more people to kind of, there's such a big kind of ocean full of fish. You can find your tribe, a much more niche tribe here in Tokyo than maybe you could in Australia, in Melbourne at least.
Great. So networking, we could say that networking is a key factor to succeed and to have a better, a great performance in Japan, right? As a creative.
I think so. And I think the networking doesn't have to necessarily be like businessy networking. It might just be you appreciate what someone does, which I think is great. I think like foreigners networking here is interesting too, because even though you might have completely different backgrounds and completely different experiences, as foreigners in Japan, you have that kind of experience, which is kind of automatically a little bit unifying in some kind of way. I've never been a foreigner in any other country, so I can't really like vouch for any other way apart from being in Australia. But I think that kind of networking is interesting too. But yeah, I think networking is super important, but I also think it's important to do it in a genuine way, I think.
日々日々日々いい感じインド日本 good music 広い世界すべて正解
3 things you should never do or you don't recommend to do, and 3 things you recommend to do for people who wants to work in Japan.
Sure. I'll start with the never and then finish with the more positive. But
Great.
I think like a one thing which is not necessarily committed to like my like creative work, but I think that like as foreign people working in Japan, I don't know, I thought about this a lot and I've discussed it a lot with other foreign people in Japan, but I think that I came to Japan with like very little expectations. So everything's always been like things have been challenging, but a lot of things have been like a pleasant surprise or a challenging surprise or something interesting. And I noticed that when I first came here, at least as an English teacher, a lot of the people who I came with were really into something about Japan, whether it's like kind of otaku-y stuff or something else. And I think that when you create like that fantasy of Japan in your head and you come and live in Japan, the reality and the fantasy doesn't really match because your idea of Japan is here and the reality is like the everyday challenges. Whereas my expectations were so low. So I think I think it happens too as foreign people blaming Japan for like challenges and shortcomings, I think is interesting. You know, business can be super hard in Japan. It can be super challenging. Even paperwork stuff, even like tiny things like hanko still frustrates me. But at the same time, you kind of have to adapt to it. I think that sometimes people can blame Japan also like in a business sense, but also just socially like, oh, Japan is too much like this or too much like that. And I think that kind of puts a negative spin on something that maybe is going to kind of weigh you down more, if that makes sense. I think like also like the second one would just be like when you are networking with people, it's like, and this happened when I worked in the music industry in Australia too. It's like be genuine, like don't be kind of phony with a networking. I don't know. I think this is just a general media industry kind of thing. But if you want to get to know someone, it's because you're interested in their work, not just kind of to climb. I think that can also happen a little bit.
Yeah.
And then also I think the third one is like don't limit yourself. Like there are challenges in Japan, but I think there's a lot of things to overcome. For example, like I've spoken many times, like my language skill is not great, but I can find other ways to kind of overcome that, for example, or I don't know the kind of the ins and outs of Japanese business meetings. So I have a Japanese partner and we can work together and figure that sort of stuff out rather than being like, I can't speak this good Japanese, so I can't do this and I can't do this and I can't do this. You can kind of don't limit yourself by the challenges. I think it's probably the three nevers.
Great.
Yeah. And then the 3 do's is just like the opposite to being with the networking. I think it's always important to like network and make new connections and reach out. Like we connected on LinkedIn. Like I really appreciate those sort of connections. I think it's really great. And connected to that is like the authenticity. So wanting to know other people's stories or wanting to connect, whether it's like creatively to help each other out, but not necessarily just to like grow or take advantage. And I think the third point is just like to travel outside of Tokyo. Tokyo is amazing and I love it, but that's not all of Japan. I think that's going to give a kind of broader perspective on Japan.
by doing what you do as a writer, a photographer, or content creator, or even in marketing in general, do you think there are more opportunities outside these big cities, or people should insist or should look for them in the big cities?
That's a good question. It's probably I'm going to be a bit hypocritical answering it, because I think yes, but at the same time I live like basically 10 minutes from Shibuya. I live 5 minutes from Shibuya. So I'm like in the center of it. But I think like the office that I'm in now, our office, the owner of this office also just bought a house in like Kanazawa. Like I think there's a lot of opportunity, or there's a lot of people looking. And I don't think this is COVID related necessarily, but that's a lot of like tourism right now, talking about getting out of the city, getting out of the crowds. But also I think my business partner and I were talking recently, there's a lot of companies like buying properties in the countryside. Like the owner of this working space has a property in the countryside. And I think there's a shift slowly, but the shift towards more remote and freelance work. I think there's definitely opportunity to live in the countryside and embrace that side. I think there's also like Fukuoka is a really good city for startups, I've been told. So like those type of areas, I think is definitely there's opportunity to work and survive. Like one of the writers that I hire for a lot of copywriting work that works for us, she's Australian, but she lives in Hyogo. So, you know, her she can just take it easy, you know, her rent's not going to be that much, daily cost is not going to be that much, she can get better at Japanese, like those sort of benefits I think are definitely still there. And I'm from the country, like my ultimate fantasy, which is a pretty common one, is to move out, renovate a nice house, move out. So I think definitely there's opportunity.
Good to know it. Have you seen interest from Japanese entrepreneurs to include, or accept foreign professionals in their projects?
I think from the companies that we've worked with, I can really only speak for. One of the companies was a Japanese company. It's called Pocket Change. Basically, they have like this kiosk that you can put all your random change in from when you travel, put it into the machine, and it gives you like digital, like maybe you want Amazon credit or something. So maybe, you know, you've been like China, Korea, Japan, and you have like 100, like so many yens and all those sort of things you can't exchange. And it's a really cool machine. It's at the airports and you put it in and it just gives you your digital currency. So that's really cool. But they are a full Japanese company, but they also hired a foreign guy because they kind of appreciate the foreign perspective, I think. And I think a lot of, there's another company we're working with right now, and the two key people of contact, one is German and one is half Japanese, half German. So I think that there's definitely an openness to kind of hiring more foreign people. I think the main companies with my foreign friends that have got jobs in Japan are like big companies, you know, like Amazon, where else? Amazon, like I think like a Twitter, like Adidas, those big companies have foreign people because it's a foreign company, but also like those kind of startups do. I think probably like, you know, banks, like I'm sure there's not going to be many foreign people working at like Mizuho Bank or something like that.
Yeah, of
but
course,
I think for startups, I think they have to be, right? The Japanese population is declining. Their potential market is getting smaller if they're only going to focus on Japanese customers. So exactly. I think it's getting valued more.
So I was curious about this perspective from the Japanese entrepreneurs, or these small Japanese companies, the very small ones.
Yeah, I'm sure it's kind of both. I'm sure it's also kind of your idea as well as having kind of that foreign face is maybe beneficial. I've actually been to like presentations for kind of like rent a foreigner. I've been to presentations where these companies have been presenting to their client and they invite me. Like I might have a minor role in this project, but they invite me to have like, because it's like 4 Japanese guys. So a little bit of like, something interesting, but like, it's easy money. I just turn up and like a nod and that's it. But I think it's probably both. But I think also a lot of companies are starting to respect kind of foreign opinion at the moment, at least probably Western native opinion.
Good to know that, and I'm sure it will be gradually better from now on. I hope so, and I think so also. Lucy, 5 quick personal question hints on Japan. Your favorite artist, maybe a painter, illustrator, designer, architect, whoever, singer or band?
I really love like a like in terms of architecture, I've written a lot about like Kengo Kuma. I really admire Kengo Kuma's work. I was actually doing a hotel inspection today of a new hotel, and I was like, this is beautiful. The ceiling is beautiful. And of course, it's Kengo Kuma design. So I think as an artist, he does amazing. As an architect, he designs such amazing buildings that blend, you know, nature and the history of Japan with also like modern senses of like minimalism and everything, which I think is just like so fascinating and beautiful. Yeah.
Good. And a musician, you were working in the music industry. So let us know which band or singer are you crazy about there in Japan?
I've been so bad at discovering. I think I got burnt out discovering music and stuff in Australia. I was so obsessed with like new releases and what was coming out. Now I listen to so much just like ambient music. It's kind of boring. Like there was one like playlist that I was listening to, and I was like, what is this? It's amazing. And it's an artist called Hiroshi Yoshimura. I didn't know anything about him. He's got not that many plays on Spotify. I swear I'm not being like a pretentious, you don't know him, but I actually was just kind of discovered him. And there was also like this really great compilation that came out called, what is it? Kankyo Ongaku. It's like kind of ambient, peaceful music, but you can find it on like Spotify for sure. And it's kind of like weird new wave ambient, like new age ambient kind of 80s, 90s electronic music. I also love like what's his name? Sakamoto Ryuichi.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, like that sort of like piano ambient stuff. Yeah, so kind of like I love that kind of ambient background music. I love Brian Eno and that sort of stuff anyway. So that's
good.
My vibe.
Okay, your favorite food, drink, beverage, candy. What drives you crazy in Japan?
I love everything, but okay, the number one biggest treat is like when you've had like a long day or a hot day, or you're really tired and you go to izakaya and get like a crispy nama beer with like the frost and stuff. We don't have that in Australia. It's so good. It's the best. I love that. That's my favorite dish food. That sounds like I have a drinking problem, but that's the best. I love like weirdly, and I'm not just saying this to be like, oh, a foreigner who loves natto, but I do eat natto a lot. I think it's like the Japanese alternative to Vegemite. I know it's super healthy, so I have to do my respects to that stinky dish too.
I loved it. Natto.
Yeah, it's good. Right?
I used to prepare it with the karashi.
Oh,
nori.
Nice.
I mean, the kome, karashi, nori, umeboshi.
Yeah.
And of course, shoyu, and you will love mozzarella cheese.
Oh, I never mixed that.
My personal Western taste.
Good.
But I loved it. I mean, I could eat that natto 3 times every day.
Yeah.
And the tamago, of course.
Yeah.
We have some stores here. It's not that easy to buy. It's not that cheap as in Japan, but yeah.
Mixing like the hot rice and the like a raw egg and the natto and making it awesome. And then I like get like a crispy nori sheets and just like tiny bites, and I call it Japanese taco. It's not anything like Japanese taco, but I'm like just eating the natto mixture on the nori. It's so good. I love it.
Great. Fantastic. A special book.
Well, there was actually like one book that Monocle magazine, I'm sure you know Monocle magazine, just released like a hardcover book on Japan. It's got like such beautiful photos and lovely descriptions. I really love them. I think it's just called Japan, or like the Monocle Guide to Japan. It's really amazing. And then I was thinking like to recommend people to read. I think it can be a little bit, but it's not for everyone. But like I really love Tokyo Vice. I don't know if you ever read that, Jake Adelstein. It's like basically he's an American journalist, and he came to Japan and got really good at Japanese and was working for like Yomiuri Shimbun. I don't remember how many years ago, but he's like kind of talking about like kind of the shadier side of Japan, which I think is always like kind of interesting. So I really loved. It's interesting, not for like Japanese culture and really appreciating Japanese culture, but it's interesting to kind of see that side of Japan or read about that side of Japan. I think they're making it into a TV show too, so it'll be
really?
Yeah.
Good to know.
We'll see.
Okay, and your favorite place, might be a city, might be your favorite cafe or izakaya, whatever, your favorite place and season in Japan.
I'd say if I had to recommend a place, like I would say it's pretty big to recommend, but like the southern islands of Japan, like, Okinawa is beautiful, but like, Okinawa's islands like Ishigaki and Iriomote, and even like between Kagoshima and Okinawa, there's a string of like really beautiful islands there. I've been to Amami Oshima and Yoron. It's just like, I know Japan's so famous for its snow and beautiful snow, but on the other end of the country and on the other end of the spectrum, there's actually insanely beautiful islands and super clear water, such stunning beaches. Like the culture is different too. I don't know. Did you ever get a chance to explore?
I went to Naha. I stayed 2 weeks there, but no more around. I mean, I just went to some small towns around, but not out of that area, and I really loved it. It was like, wow, I mean, I could stay here forever. I was thinking of abandoning the scholarship, everything, and just stay there fishing and enjoying the life in front of the sea. It's amazing.
Such a different vibe. Yeah, it's a different, and like I know Australians go to like, Thailand and like love Bali, and we go to for like partying and beach, and then Fiji for the pristine beach. But Japan has it. They have it. So they have so much of it. But it's so interesting. I think the communication of this feature of Japan is just not ever been as communicated as well as, the snow of Niseko and all that sort of stuff. But it's still a secret, kind of semi-secret little gem. Yeah.
Yeah, that's quite an experience being there, being in that area.
I'm actually just about to write for Lonely Planet. Are going to release a new book on Japan experiences. So I'm writing about the islands for them. So
congratulations.
No, it's good. I'm excited to do it. So.
Great. Lucy, it was a pleasure.
Thank you so much.
It was fantastic to see you.
No, so thank you so much for your time today. I really appreciate it.